I'm Nick Finelli, and this is the Charlotte FC podcast.
Now it's my pleasure to welcome Charlotte to Major League Soccer as our 30th team. And now your new owner, David Tepper. Charlotte, you ready to party?
Please join me in welcoming Charlotte Football Club's first head coach, Miguel Angel Ramirez.
Buenos dias.
In the 2022 MLS Super Draft, presented by Adidas, Charlotte FC selects, from the University of Maryland and Generation Adidas, Ben Bender.
Welcome, benvenuti, bienvenidos. The Season 2 campaign is almost upon us, and there has been a lot going on behind the scenes. One of those items is the beginning of MLS Season Pass on Apple TV. I was fortunate enough to be able to visit the MLS headquarters in New York City on February 1st when Season Pass was officially released, and sat down for an interview with Major League Soccer Executive Vice President in charge of communications, Dan Courtemanche. On this episode of the Charlotte FC podcast, I talk with Dan about MLS Season Pass, MLS growth, his career, and more.
Dan Courtemanche, Major League Soccer Executive Vice President of Communications.
And how long have you been in this position?
This will be my 25th season, 2 different stints.
What is your day-to-day role?
I would say I work within the marketing mix at Major League Soccer, and overall focus is to raise the profile of our league, our clubs, our players, and all of our key stakeholders, and also manage the reputation of Major League Soccer and our clubs, so people are inspired to consume our product, whether it's purchase tickets, watch on MLS Season Pass, purchase merchandise, check us out on, Charlotte FC's website or MLS Soccer, or even, The Athletic, and read an article there about Major League Soccer. Just, generate interest and hopefully inspire people to consume MLS and our clubs on a more consistent, deeper basis.
Now, does all outward communication from the league kind of go through your office?
Yeah,
and the people that work for you?
At the league office, and then we work very closely with our clubs. So with Charlotte FC, it'd be Woody Wilder and Will Martin and their staff. And then we have 28 other teams, but we also have other stakeholders that we work with closely, whether it's the U.S. Soccer Federation, Canada Soccer, CONCACAF, NWSL. We actually have a group that meets every 2 weeks and the USL too, where we all work together as we're trying to grow the profile of the sport in the U.S. and Canada, because if we all become more popular and more relevant, everybody benefits.
And now you have your own new arm with the Leagues Cup, too. So that's like a whole nother...
We do, and that's another key stakeholder when you think about it is Liga MX down in Mexico. And that's a great example of 2 organizations coming together where some people might say, aren't they competitors? Well, yeah, on the field we are, but we also realize that collectively, if we partner, we can increase the relevance of MLS and Liga MX. Not only here in the United States, but also Mexico. And they see that opportunity. They see how Major League Soccer has grown. And granted, they're a much more mature league. They've been around, decades and decades. But they see how they can partner with us to accelerate their growth. And, knowing that there are nearly 40 million Mexican Americans in this country, there's clearly a built-in fan base for Liga MX. But also for us to have an official tournament in Leagues Cup that's part of the CONCACAF Champions League qualifying. It will have prize money, so there are incentives for players. That type of authentic, credible competition validates the quality of play in Major League Soccer for soccer fans in North America, but also globally. And we're going to have to prove it on the field, much like the Seattle Sounders did in the CONCACAF Champions League this past year, that we are, top quality. So it's something that we're really excited about.
I also think just community building in itself, or kind of nations, enjoying each other and not having like, those people, like they become more familiar when you play and enjoy things with them.
Most definitely. Again, and it's funny when you said community building. as I think about it, it's not, our partnership with Liga MX isn't just Leagues Cup. We have Campeones Cup. We have a wide variety of shared business practices. Our owners get together on a somewhat regular basis. We had all the owners from Liga MX at our All-Star game in Los Angeles about a year and a half ago when we played the Liga MX All-Stars. Mm-hmm. And then many of them also came back last summer in Minnesota. But we've also done multiple community events. Every time we have Campeones Cup, we have community events where the two clubs work together to give back to the community, whether it's a mini pitch or other charitable programs. And you're going to see more of that with Leagues Cup this summer.
And is that All-Star thing going to be a permanent kind of thing?
We're going to announce our All-Star opponent in the next few months. Okay. So more details to come. It's interesting because we had MLS, East versus West for a number of years to start the league. And then we had great success with MLS versus international opponents. Whether, it kicked off in 2003 with Chivas de Guadalajara, but whether it was Manchester United, Arsenal, Bayern Munich, the list goes on and on. And then we said, let's try something a little different. We got this great partnership with Liga MX, and we played them the last 2 years. But, we're still evaluating it, and certainly, again, great partners with Liga MX. But we do have Leagues Cup, so maybe we'll look at something different.
Nice. MLS perspective on the Apple deal, like the timing of it, because it was back in June. Were you all searching? I mean, obviously this is like 450% increase from the last deal. Like what were you all going into? Like how did that come about?
Yeah, it really started about a little over 4 years ago when we sat down and said, you know what, we need to set ourselves being the league and our clubs, our owners, players, corporate partners, etc. What can we do to set ourselves up to be, have the greatest success? And we sat down, so like I said, about 4.5 years ago and said, you know what, if we want to position ourselves for success, we should think about how can we have our national agreements, our international broadcast agreements, our local agreements, regional, you name it, linear, and streaming expire all at the same time. So if we wanted to, we could go out and sell the package to one company. 4.5 years ago, you're looking like there's not a lot of companies that could do a global deal. 1, 2, maybe 3. And even today, you might say the same thing. And as we looked at it, we're thinking of different companies that could do it. And we're like, wow, wouldn't it be great someday if we could be in business with Apple? And it was a little bit pie in the sky when you go back to 4 years ago. They weren't doing any sports content, or certainly not live sports content. And we were talking to, as part of our process, our first right of refusal and negotiating period was with our current linear partners, and had discussions with them, some of them who remain our linear partners, Fox, TSN, moving forward, Univision through our Leagues Cup agreement, which is great. But ultimately, we sat down and said, wow, if we could get somebody like Apple involved, the most innovative company in the world, one of the best marketers, best in class when it comes to customer experience, man, that could really accelerate the growth of Major League Soccer and our clubs. And it was literally a little over a year ago. It was mid-January when our commissioner, Don Garber, met with Eddie Q, who's the Senior Vice President of Services at Apple, and really started to discuss, what kind of relationship or partnership could we have together. And then that followed up with a meeting with a lot of executives at Major League Soccer and Apple literally a month ago this week. It was ironic that we announced MLS Season Pass on February 1st, and they looked back and they said it was February 1st and 2nd that those two executive teams met last year and really started to look at the details and said, you know what, we might have something here. Apple, and they've said it multiple times publicly, that if they were going to do something, they wanted to make sure that they could have a partnership that could be global in scope, because they're global, they're in more than 100 countries, and also provide the opportunity where there are no blackouts and no restrictions. And with Major League Soccer, they had that opportunity. They also, from a global perspective, had an entity that has the most diverse player pool in the world of any professional sports league. We have players, at least at the end of 2022, we'll see when it comes out with the final rosters in 2023, but at the end of 2022, we had players who were born in 82 different countries. To put it in perspective, the NBA, which is an extremely global league, they do a great job. I think they're around 40, 42 different countries by birth. Serie A is the next highest by birth for global soccer leagues. I think they're at 64, 65 different countries. So we're almost 20 countries ahead of Serie A. You know, I joke sometimes with my 11-year-old son, and I say, we have some countries where I have to look on the map where they are, which is phenomenal. As you know, we talk about the diversity of our sport in our league. So, you know, they looked at it as, you know, this global property, no blackouts, no restrictions, a league that has seen significant growth, and then finally the World Cup's coming here in 2026. So that's only going to accelerate the growth, not just of Major League Soccer, but of U.S. soccer, Canada soccer, CONCACAF, NWSL, USL, you name it. We're all going to benefit from the World Cup coming. And ultimately, you know, we worked on it for a handful of months and announced in June of last year, and away we go.
Yeah, I mean, you could start to see just the growth of the non-soccer fan just from this past World Cup and how it's kind of, you know, they're searching and looking for more, and now they have an easy place to find it.
Yeah, it's just one button is all you push. And I think it's important to, you have the opportunity, you know, season ticket holders, it's part of their season ticket package. And if you're a passionate fan, you can subscribe, whether it's monthly, annually, or if you just want to check it out opening weekend. All the games will be free, or throughout the season, an average of 6 games will be free in front of the paywall on a regular basis. And we hope people check it out and say, this is really amazing. I'm going to subscribe. But if they don't want to, they still have 6 games on a regular basis each week.
Plus the linear services too.
Correct. The Apple will be the hub. Apple TV and the Apple TV app and MLS Season Pass will be the hub. The games will be simulcast with different announcers on Fox and then TSN and RDS up in Canada.
So when you were thinking about this, were you thinking global strategy and U.S. or kind of just they were kind of all together? Because when I think about just mobile by itself, and not soccer in the game, but mobile by itself, Apple only has like 50% of the market as far as mobile phones, and their app itself isn't even on Android yet.
Right.
And then flip that to the world, well, Android is like 72% almost of world mobile devices. So, like, are there different strategies going on at once for these? How is that working?
Certainly the U.S. and Canada are our core focus. But again, with players from 82 different countries in a global sport, we saw global opportunity. And the beauty of the partnership with Apple is you can watch MLS Season Pass on any internet-connected device, whether it's Samsung Galaxy, Android, whether it's my Dell laptop. All I have to do is go to tv.apple.com and I can watch MLS Season Pass. If you're already working within the Apple ecosystem, you can do that. You can download the Apple TV app, which is in nearly every smart TV these days. So it's pretty simple. For example, I have a Sony television at home. It's not Apple. Apple actually doesn't make televisions.
Right.
But on my TV, I have my HBO Max app, I have my Paramount, I have ESPN Plus, and I have the Apple TV app. And I go in there, and I have the Apple ecosystem. And I go to Apple TV Plus, and actually all those things that I just mentioned, they're within the Apple TV ecosystem also. And then you have MLS Season Pass. So it's actually a pretty simple process. I joke with people, so as I mentioned before we started this interview, I'm a University of Georgia graduate, and I watch a lot of college football, SEC football in the fall. And I watch with my 11-year-old son, and he's become a big Georgia fan. And I remember last fall, we were sitting there, we were watching like Auburn LSU, and he said, "Dad, I can't watch the game. The internet's down." I said to my son, his name's Luke. I said, "Luke, just turn to channel 300. What are you talking about?" Dad, I don't want to go out of the apps." Going to linear television is foreign to him.
Yeah.
He's like, "I just want to go to the apps. I know where to get my content." And it reminded me, I'm like, it's actually pretty easy, because there's sometimes when I'm thinking of a sporting event, I'm like, what channel is that on? And I have to go to the guide, I have to go to search. And so if you think now, if you're a soccer fan, specifically Major League Soccer, you push one button, it pops right up.
Are there any considerations for YouTube TV?
We talked to a lot of folks. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
We talked to a lot of folks, and there are a lot of. And by the way, we have a ton of content on YouTube through all of our clubs and our league. But ultimately, we thought Apple was the best partner. And I will also say, if you have Roku, if you have Google
Chromecast.
Chromecast, all those things, they'll have the Apple TV app.
Yeah.
So it is one thing that, because I mentioned it to friends, like, do I have to have Apple? I'm like, no, you just have to be connected to the internet, and you can go in and you can watch our games. It's pretty simple.
Now, with that also, I noticed, like, I have Apple TV, and, like, everything is you can closed caption everything in like all these different languages. Will the soccer games be closed captioned in other languages? Do we know that?
Closed captioned in English. I believe Spanish. I need to triple check that. It's the first time anybody's asked, so we will triple check that. Clearly, the games will be broadcast in English, Spanish, French, and in future years, the plan is to broadcast in Portuguese also. And who knows? 10 years from now, it could be in many more languages. But right now, that's our plan. But excellent question, and we'll need to get back to you on that one.
Then that's fine. And then you also are going to have a whip around show. Do you have a name for it?
We are, finalizing
the
the name between now and February 25th on opening day. We will unveil the name and reveal the name clearly on February 25th when people tune in. You'll be able to watch the whip around show. We've got a lot of great, studio talent, some ex-players. Actually, I think all of them played at a high level who will be the on-air talent to discuss what's going on, whether it's, Kaylin Kyle, who played for the Canadian women's national team, or Bradley Wright Phillips, who, clearly played in England and did so well with the Red Bulls, Columbus and LAFC here in Major League Soccer. I think it's going to be great. Every Saturday night, you can decide 7:30 local time, watch your game, or go to the whip round show. And then on those select Wednesdays, I think we're looking at 6 Wednesdays where we have games, you'll be able to watch the whip around show.
Nice. And then as far as talent, y'all released about 18 commentators in the beginning, studio people. Then about 20 days later, we got the next 31. So I guess we're up to 49. Was there another phase?
30 plus more coming.
30 plus more coming.
Yep.
And was that just through another phase of just
that'll be the third and final phase. When you think about this is a massive operation. When you have English language commentators, your play-by-play analyst on site at every game, Spanish language commentators, play-by-play analyst on site at every game, French commentators, play-by-play analyst on site for our Canadian teams, and then you've got the studio talent in Spanish and English and French. So you have a lot of different roles that they'll be playing. It's a massive project and operation, and we're fortunate that there are a lot of experienced and talented people who've joined on, including a guy like Liam McHugh, who I've known for, almost 15 years now.
Announcer, right?
He's a hockey announcer, but he loves soccer. He played college soccer at the University of Buffalo University. I should probably know that. Mm-hmm. The first time I met him, we were partners with NBC in 2010. And Liam had just joined NBC and said, boy, I'm really looking forward. It sounds like I'm going to be doing some host duties for MLS on NBC. And NBC ultimately decided, we really want you to focus on hockey. And his career's taken off, and he's done such a good job with that. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people don't know that he's a hardcore soccer guy.
That's awesome. And so with all that, too, you had to hire production people, the whole thing, because MLS now owns this, whereas before you didn't. Correct.
So
is that done on purpose
in our partnership with Apple, we are producing, similar to what you see with a lot of the major European leagues, we are producing a world feed. It'll be an awesome picture. Again, goes back to Apple. Customer experience, number one for them. So you're going to have an awesome picture. You're going to have advanced data and analytics, an incredible graphics package. And we, along with Apple, and some best-in-class partners, which we'll be revealing between now and February 25th, will be providing that. But, as you can imagine, we went out and secured some of the best in the business, not only in North America, but individuals with World Cup experience. And I think you've probably seen that with some of the talent we've announced. These are people who have deep experience in the sport, talented broadcasters at all levels, and have called the biggest events.
Now, with that also, that production comes other things, such as storytelling content. Is there plans to be player features, history type things, docuseries, documentaries?
All of the above, and I would encourage soccer fans to check out MLS Season Pass because that already exists. As of today, this morning, you can go on there's player profiles on icons such as David Beckham or Taylor Twellman, or current players. There's features on rituals for every team. There's drone features, touring a stadium. There's a lot of content, more than 4,000 pieces of video on demand right now on MLS Season Pass as of today, the first day, and that will only increase throughout the season. So our clubs, which in the past, they had a lot of resources dedicated toward broadcast broadcast production and getting games on their regional networks, they've reallocated some of those resources, if not most of those resources, to creating compelling content.
So this was all done when the agreement started. You started simultaneously working on that content, so it would be full.
Oh yes, this has been months and months and months in the works,
Nice.
and you'll see. I've been fortunate as we conducted a number of meetings with journalists over the past few days to really drill down and see the great content. And it goes back. We have all the games from 2019 through current day, and then we have classic matches from even before that. There are features like the San Jose Earthquakes was a feature from the greatest comeback in earthquakes in arguably soccer history when they came back from 5 goals down in 2003. Those type of historic pieces are now on MLS Season Pass.
MLS owns all that content that was aired on ESPN because they've been a partner for all these other years. All these others, you have all of that content, so you're just able to bring it over?
Correct.
Okay. That's nice. And then as far as kind of looking down the road here, what do you hope? We're 4 years away from the next World Cup. What is kind of your pie in the sky kind of belief? Like, where will they be? Where will MLS be with this deal on that day?
I think that's a great way to look at it, because you can't judge MLS Season Pass and the Apple partnership in June of this year or even at the end of this year. Talk to us in 3 to 5 years, and you can see where the league and the sport is going overall. And even without the Apple partnership, the World Cup provided an incredible opportunity for all of us involved in soccer, whether it's the business side or whether it's my 11-year-old son who plays competitive soccer. It's going to be like rocket fuel for the popularity and the growth of our sport. And Major League Soccer is the Division I men's league, or the NWSL, USL, all these leagues, we're all going to benefit. And, behind the scenes, we're working very diligently on a strategic plan as to how we, the soccer community, Major League Soccer, and ultimately working with FIFA and the key stakeholders, can grow the profile. You've seen comments from Gianni Infantino, the president of FIFA, how he wants to increase the profile of soccer in the United States and Canada and believes the World Cup can be the catalyst to do so. We wholeheartedly agree, and we're all going to work collectively to do so. But I think coming out in 2027, it's going to be a different Major League Soccer. And I would also say if you looked at any 5-year period in Major League Soccer, at the start of that 5-year period, you would not have been able to predict what the league was going to look like in 5 years. And sometimes, at times, it's a dramatic difference in a positive way, at least since probably 2001. We had some challenges in 2001, 2002. But since then, the growth of the league and how it's exploded has been pretty amazing in those 5-year increments. And now we're looking at a 4-year increment, especially as we hit 2027. But our goal has always been to be among the top leagues in the world. And in many ways, we've achieved that goal. When you look at our stadiums, you look at our infrastructure, you look at our training facilities, you look at our corporate partners, you look at the overall relevance. I mean, heck, I was at that opening game in Charlotte when there were nearly 75,000 people there. And at the time, it was the second largest soccer crowd on the planet. In early 2022. It was amazing. And if you look at that, we're among the top leagues in the world. And for years people would say, well, what about the players? Well, guess what? We had 37 players at the World Cup in Qatar. That was the highest in the Western Hemisphere when it comes to soccer leagues. And that was number 6 overall, just behind the traditional 5 European leagues. So the progress that we made on the field has been amazing. And it's not just those 37 players, including one who won a World Cup in Thiago Almada, but it's also the player development and what we're seeing at the youth level from, the under-9s through the under-17s, through the kids that are coming up through the system now. And they have a pathway with MLS Next to MLS Next Pro, now to the first team, and hopefully to the national team.
Yes. How'd you even get into this? How'd you even know this was a position?
This role, so I started my career with a sports marketing agency in Atlanta, University of Georgia graduate, finished high school in suburban Atlanta, so kind of matriculated to that area. And spent about 3.5 years there. Then I spent 3 years, and with that sports marketing agency, I worked on some soccer properties. And I played growing up, not college, not at a high level. I mean, I love the game. I still go out and play with my 11-year-old and get nutmegged by his buddies. But that led to 3 years at a startup professional indoor soccer league called the Continental Indoor Soccer League. There was a team called the Carolina Vipers at the old Independence Arena back in the day. They only lasted 1 year. But Dallas Sidekicks, San Diego Sockers, some familiar names from back in the day that were in the CISL. I was there for 3 years, and then Major League Soccer was starting, and they recruited me to come work at MLS, and the rest is history.
Wow. And did you, like, when you went to school, when you went to Georgia, was that kind of where you were leaning towards something in that area?
I wish I could say I was that smart, but when I went to the University of Georgia, I was a business major. My focus was marketing and personal selling. And as I was going through the process, like most college students do, during my senior year of interviewing, almost all the jobs I interviewed for were sales jobs. And I actually saw an internship for a sports marketing firm. And I passed up on a full-time job in sales and said, you know what, I'll try this for a few months. And if it works out, I love sports. Marketing's my major. So let's try sports marketing. If it doesn't work out, I'll get a job in sales. My parents thought I was crazy working as an intern when I had like a company car and a sales job. And the sports marketing thing worked out.
Yeah. Like I told you earlier, I was in sports marketing. The company that had the rights to the University of South Carolina at that time was Host Communications.
Yeah.
So you're probably familiar with Jim Host, and then they, Learfield and IMG and all that kind of moved into that. But that's kind of the world I was in too. It's kind of interesting. What is the favorite part of your job in that? Like what are the little things that you could do like every day and not even know that you're doing it? Like you're just like, I'm just doing this. You don't even.
The favorite part of my job is discussing Major League Soccer with, I'll say, key stakeholders, and that sounds like some business term, but it could be journalists, it could be broadcast talent, it could be players, it could be corporate sponsors, it could be, you name it. I just love talking about the league because it's a great story, and I'm not here to pat myself on the back because I'm one cog in nearly 400 people here at Major League Soccer. But the progress that we've made, the league going from 10 to now 29 clubs, and it's just credit to our owners, the investment that they've made during some challenging times early in the lifespan of Major League Soccer to, as I always joke with people when I was here during the early years at times, they were like, hey, is that league going to, survive? And now it's like, how much is it going to thrive? And you see, and it goes back to the investment of the owners and their belief. But yeah, it's really talking about the league and hopefully seeing something that I discussed. Maybe it was with a journalist and it ended up in an article or it ended up in a segment, or maybe it's with a player. And a good example is, a few weeks ago, about 2 weeks ago, we were in San Jose. We had 42 players out for what we call our media and marketing days. And then we visited Apple Park the next day. There's a big, you can check it out right now in our MLS Season Pass, is a photo of all the players with Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, Eddie Q, their SVP of services, and our commissioner, Don Garber. But as part of that process, I actually do a presentation to the players before they go through all the marketing shoots and media interviews. And it always puts a smile to my face. And we're fortunate. We have a lot of guys who are not only talented athletes on the field and good guys, but they're smart guys too. And I do I say it's like speed dating. It's like an 8 to 10 minute presentation. And then I'm up, listening to the guys in the little press conference room, which is one of like 35 stations that they go through. They're doing the photo shoots, the glamour shots and all that. But then they come and sit down with like 40 journalists who are firing questions at them. And I hear Kellen Acosta talking about MLS Season Pass and something, about, or the growth of the league, or there's Mark Anthony Kay talking about, wow, when I started, the league was here, and look how far it's come, and look where it's going.
You're hitting all your points.
And I'm like, he listened to the presentation. And I'd say that, not that I know both those guys that well, but I'd say that if they were sitting there like, yeah, because I always say, throw in a few videos, some colorful slides, and try to keep it entertaining, and people will pay attention. And that's nice to see those types of things.
Cool. What's the most challenging part?
The most challenging part is probably our number one goal in the marketing mix is to continue to grow our fan base. And we've made a lot of progress, but it's still something that's a challenge each and every day as we look to grow the profile of Major League Soccer. And then certainly, when you work in communications, it goes without saying, crisis situations, or unfortunately, we've had a number of people within the soccer community who passed away when the last 2 months, whether it was Kevin Payne, one of the founding executives in our league, or Grant Wall, good friend and longtime journalist who did such a great job covering the league, or or Pelé or Alex Yanis, one of the original reporters of the New York Times who covered the league. It's been, kind of a rough couple months in that area.
Like in Charlotte, Anton Walks.
Yeah,
Just
of
like
course.
all
How
those
could I
things.
forget Anton? Yeah, I didn't know Anton personally, but I mean, the outpouring of support for Anton Walks was amazing. Yeah, it's just in the last couple months, it's been a little rough in that area. And then, when certain things happen that you have no control over, but you need to, work with some key stakeholders to manage situations and hopefully figure out that it's beneficial for everybody involved.
I think it's interesting. Every time I've asked you questions and I'm trying to, pull a little bit more out personally, you're always bringing the we. Like, this is your baby. Like, you have done this for 20 some odd years. So you, this is not just you. This is a bigger thing. Like, it just always...
What's the old saying? There's no I in team.
Yeah. No.
It's
totally.
true, though. We're fortunate. We have such a dedicated leader in Don Garber. And people don't understand, Don started here in August of 99. And the guy, first of all, he's passionate. He's really, really sharp. But he is a machine when it comes to his work ethic. And he pushes us hard, and he makes us better. And I know at times soccer fans are like, oh, Garber, and they'll give him a hard time about things. But the guy is always pushing to grow this league. And he's pushing the owners, he's pushing our corporate partners, and he's pushing the staff. Heck, he'd push the players if they let him.
So what is the scariest thing you've ever done? And it doesn't have to be necessarily
Scariest thing I've ever done.
Scariest thing.
Not professionally, it could be personally.
It could be personal, like some sort of decision you made that maybe changed things or something, totally just...
Boy, nobody's ever asked me that question. I'll say professionally, the scariest and smartest was probably when I decided to switch jobs after working for 3.5 years for a sports marketing agency in Atlanta and took a flyer on a startup professional indoor soccer league. And moved to Los Angeles. I didn't know a soul out there. The guy who hired me was the only person I knew. And I said, you know what, let's give this a shot. And at the time I knew it was a summer indoor soccer league owned largely by NBA and NHL owners. And I said, if this doesn't work out, at least I'll have met a lot of people in hockey and basketball and I might have a career there. Fortunately, the soccer thing worked out.
Yeah, changed your trajectory.
It did.
What is one moment you wish you could replay just hundreds of times over? Maybe in your career,
I was about to
here
say,
in MLS, or
of
course, personal
my
stuff.
wedding
kids,
and the
your
birth of my
weddings,
son.
people
I mean,
born.
but we'll stick to professional stuff for this. I think we're all much better now with iPhones and smartphones with taking pictures and video. But in the early days, I wasn't very good at that. You think about, and this, you got to be careful with nostalgia. People are always like, "Oh, it was so great back in the day," and I joke with my wife from time to time. We'll buy something, some type of food, or I'm like, I remember when that was so great when, years ago when I was younger, and then you'll eat it and you're like, it really wasn't that good. But I will say, as you look at certain, we'll focus specifically on Major League Soccer, opening day in San Jose, April 6, 1996, when people are like, is this league going to actually do something? And it was packed and it was grand and it was awesome. And then, a few months later, we played, it was a doubleheader with USA, Mexico, but the Tampa Bay Mutiny, there's a blast from the past.
Yeah.
And the LA Galaxy, and 96,000 people were there. And then all along the way, I've attended every stadium opening except for 2 due to personal reasons. I couldn't attend a couple of the stadium openings. All the opening games. Unfortunately, when I travel with our commissioner and we do media interviews, that I've attended those throughout the years, and every single one of those is special. But I will say, MLS Cup 2018 was pretty special because I have family in Atlanta, Georgia. And I think for years, they were like, is this soccer thing really working out? And they'd see it. And then we brought a team to Atlanta. And we had an all-star game with 72,000 people against Juventus. And then in December of that year, we had 73,000. I think it was 73,019 or 119 people. And then about 6 weeks later, the Super Bowl was in the same building. And they had 70,000 people. Now, part of it was they had seat kills for broadcasters and everything, but I would brag to my friends and family back in Atlanta. I'm like, yeah, we got to do the Super Bowl in the same building.
Right.
So those kind of things, I think we should all be proud of that. But me, from a specific aspect, if I could replay some of those from a professional standpoint, it's pretty cool.
Sure.
It's stoppage time.
All right, these are last kind of quick hitter questions.
Yeah.
So, personal ritual you look forward to most?
spending time with my family on weekends. I am a wannabe amateur photographer. I shoot my son's soccer games and flag football games, and every once in a while, and unfortunately in this business, I've gotten to know a lot of guys that shoot MLS Cup, World Cups. It's like phenomenal photographers. Every once in a while, I'll get one or two photos when I'm shooting my son's games. I'm like, that's almost up there with the big time guys.
Right.
And actually, I'll share them with some of them, and I'll ask for tips and things like that. So, spending time with my family and doing that is clearly, number one on my list.
All right. We're all in this digital world. So do you have like an unplugged activity that you go to?
Unplugged activity, the one place where I always, it's interesting. I was about to say I always am unplugged, but to a degree I'm not, is when I exercise. And I try to exercise on a daily basis. But as I was just thinking, I have my Apple Watch and I listen to music. So I guess if I'm listening to music while I'm exercising, I'm not really unplugged, but I am unplugged. I don't have my smartphone with me. I joke, a handful of times I've brought my iPhone with me to exercise, whether it's running or in the gym or whatever. And one of those was the morning in 2007 when David Beckham, I knew it was going to get announced. Everything was teed up. And I was like, hang on one second here. Speaking of photographers, that's the LA Galaxy photographer. So I knew Beckham was going to get announced that day. Everything was ready to go. I said, I'm going to go get a quick workout at like 5 a.m. We were in Indianapolis for the MLS Super Draft that year. And it was the one time where I brought my phone. And then because David was based in Madrid at the time, his agents were in London and everything, I was getting calls and texts, and that was a bad idea.
Maybe you needed to.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And there was a reason why I brought it, and it wasn't the greatest workout ever, but that's okay.
All right, so you're sitting down, you're watching an MLS game. What's your go-to snack?
My go-to snack for an MLS game? Probably chips and guacamole.
Nice homemade?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes, yeah, it depends. Or I live in New York City, so you can just order it.
Right, that's true.
It comes in like 10 minutes.
Right. What design or like process impresses you more, interior or exterior?
I would say probably exterior. Yeah, as I think about architecture and different places I've been throughout the world, or even stadiums, you think about exterior. But nobody's ever asked me that question before.
Yeah, I always like that question just because you can tell a lot about how somebody focuses their attention.
Yeah.
Like before this interview, I would guess you were an interior person because you're a communications person. But I guess on the other hand, it's like the exterior is the outside, what everybody sees is going on. Now, there might be a lot of work that's done interior-wise, the processing to make that happen.
Right.
But yours is about showing the best face.
So when I go home for dinner this evening, I'm going to ask my wife the same question. I'm going to say, am I an interior or an exterior person? We'll see what she says.
Yeah. What is more gratifying, starting a project or finishing?
I would say starting, only because if you think, I was fortunate to be with MLS when we started, it's far from being finished. And at least professionally, everything every place I've worked at, I was really a part of a lot of startups. I worked for, a couple years with the WUSA, the first women's soccer league. I worked in a startup professional indoor soccer league. I worked for a startup sports marketing firm. Right. So yeah, startup. And then, you think about your personal life, startup with, children or whatever. And,
right. Some things don't excite people as much. Like they want to kind of complete that. Whereas I can tell just even from you talking about the season pass with MLS, like that is a new thing. That's like a startup type thing. Like that jacks you up. So
right. And people will say, well, you're starting your 25th season. Doesn't it get a little redundant? And I'm like, not here. It changes every year.
Right. What recharges you? Or what do you do to recharge, to get away from all of this?
Yeah, spend time with family, I would say. That's I'm fortunate my wife started her career in sports marketing. She worked for the Chicago Bulls, Kansas City Chiefs, Octagon. She's now out of the business, but she understands, and she also understands that, hey, let's get away, let's do something, and it's nice that she's a soccer fan too.
Yeah. All right, last one. Did you have a favorite player, favorite thing growing up in soccer that you were just like,
ooh, see, that's a challenge because I was one of those individuals where, the NASL was around when I was growing up, and then when I was in high school, it folded. So I'm dating myself right now.
Same
So
thing. I used to watch Cosmos. I went to Washington Dips games.
Okay.
Games, so
yeah, so I didn't have where I lived. I lived in Denver, and we had the Denver Dynamo. Was it Dynamo or Dynamos? And then after we moved, at the Colorado Caribou with the Caribou of Colorado, actually, with the tassels. And then I lived in Central Ohio for a number of years when the NASL was around, but we didn't have an NASL
there
team.
wasn't really TV. There wasn't to watch.
Yeah, there
It wasn't even out there. So how would you even know who to follow?
I was, I was like a big Dallas Cowboys fan as a kid growing up, and unfortunately, I didn't consume soccer until I would say, really until the '90 World Cup on TNT. Watching it. So I was in college at that time.
Well, thanks. Appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Happy to help. Appreciate everything that you're doing.
Man, that was awesome. What an exciting, passionate guy. Dan's work and dedication at MLS for almost 25 years has helped lead the charge of what Major League Soccer has become. New ideas, challenges, all those continue to inspire him and those around him. What an exciting time to be a soccer fan, right? Well, thanks everybody for listening to this episode. We'll be back next week and each match day of the season with more fascinating people talking about what they do and how things work surrounding Major League Soccer and the Charlotte Football Club. The Charlotte FC podcast is hosted and produced by me, Nick Finelli. Audio editing and mixing by Eli Finelli. We really appreciate everyone who listens to our podcast. Please make sure you follow the podcast so you get it in your favorite platform's feed. We are on Twitter and Instagram at CLTFC Podcast, and you can visit our webpage to listen and learn more at charlottefcpodcast.com.